Starting with some breaking news coming in by way of Swedish media, which the reports say that a truck has crashed into a department store in central Stockholm, injuring several people. The Swedish radio says that 3 people have been killed in this crash, and the broadcaster SVT says shots have been fired. Swedish police have said that they have received calls about a person who has injured others driving a vehicle on the central Stockholm street. Padma Rao, my colleague, joining us with more on this. Padma, what do we know at this point?
Well, I know just as much as you do. These reports of people being killed are, from what I know, not yet confirmed. But if Swedish radio reports it, then I think that's a pretty, reliable report. I think what is emerging, obviously, Palki, is a pattern, in these attacks. After all, we had the Nice truck attack in France, and then the Berlin Christmas market attack. It seems to have become the preferred mode of attacking public places, because you can cause the maximum damage. There is a surprise element there because nobody, a truck driving through one of these areas is not unexpected. At the same time, there are some reports that are calling it a terrorist attack already, and I think it might be safe to assume that because a truck running amok on such a narrow street where speed limits are very, very low is highly unlikely unless it was intentional. So from what I know, it crashed into a supermarket, or rather a department store, and they've sealed off the area, and this happens to be a pedestrian zone in the heart of Stockholm by the name of Drottninggatan, and at this time of the day it was quite crowded.
Right, and some reports quoting a public radio station in Stockholm say that 3 people have been killed and others have been injured in this attack. Online, many are already calling it a terror attack, and this is coming very close on the heels of what we saw in Westminster, where also we saw a man behind the wheel of a car mowing down people, and we saw many casualties, Padma.
Yeah, as I said, this is, obviously, given the fact that security checks are tightening, not only in Europe but around the world. There's this recent ban of carrying laptops and, all kinds of things. This is a very obvious and easy method of attacking people because it has, as I said, the surprise element, and you can cause, when there are such crowds present, you can cause the maximum damage. So this will be one of the new challenges for security forces around the world, especially in heavily populated countries like India, I would say.
Right. A truck plowing into a department store in Sweden's capital, Stockholm. The police spokeswoman has said that several people have been injured, and the reports we've received since say that 3 people have lost their lives and many others have sustained injuries. Of course, at this point, the focus, Padma, as in situations like this, is to ensure that people get relief and rescue and medical attention as soon as possible before the authorities look at the other question of who could be behind this attack.
If you remember, in November, the U.S. State Department had also advised its own tourists, to exercise caution at holiday festivals and outdoor events for the fear that terrorists would use both conventional and non-conventional weapons. And there is credible information that the Islamic State and the Levant, Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant and other affiliates, they continue to keep the focus on terrorist attacks in Europe, especially, with the view in light of the upcoming holiday season. And let's not forget, we're only a week away from Easter, so there are a lot of people are on vacation, possibly also in the Swedish capital. So vehicle attacks, and I think there will have to be a higher alert.
Right. This is very preliminary information that we have for our viewers. 3 people killed, several others injured as a truck drives into people on a street in Stockholm. Padma, if you've been there, can you describe for our viewers what the layout of the area is like? And as you said, that it had to be an intentional act because speed limits cannot be very high in places like these, in crowded cities.
Yes. Well, I haven't actually been to Stockholm, but I would imagine it's pretty much like any other big city, capital city in Europe, and I have lived in many others. And I would say even the largest in Sweden is a relatively large country. Even there, these places which are pedestrian zones tend to be really, all about people, obviously. There is no traffic as such flowing through there except for delivery trucks and a few, vehicles that are allowed. So just to bring your attention back, Palki, on the 11th of December 2010, there were 2 bombs in central Stockholm, and both of them had killed the bomber. And those bombs were also described as an act of terrorism. In that case, it was an Iraqi-born Swedish citizen, and it was supposed to be the first suicide attack in these Scandinavian countries that was linked to Islamic tourism. And of course, then in 2011, we had another such attack not an attack, I'm sorry, there was an arrest in England in connection with the Stockholm bombing. So there is an increased, threat to Sweden. Sweden has also taken quite a strident stand on the situation in the Middle East. And, I fear that attacks will be on the rise, even in Scandinavia, which has maintained a relatively neutral posture in most world events.
Right, Padma, thanks very much for bringing us the information and the perspective. We'll leave it at that for the moment. Very sketchy information at this point. We'll be tracking this story very closely for you, of course, here on WION.